Before I moved to New Zealand, I had already studied English for many years. I thought I was prepared. But there were a few things about the English language that I only discovered after I started working, socializing, and living my everyday life here. These weren't things I learned from textbooks, exams, or social media. I only understood them once I actually moved to New Zealand. So in this video, I want to share my discoveries, what I learned about English while living here, from my own experience, in case you are planning to move to New Zealand or you've already moved and some things feel harder than you expected. Let's talk. Discovery number one, people are genuinely patient, more than you expect. This is something I really want you to know, especially if you are planning to move to New Zealand and you feel nervous about your English. Most people are much more patient than you expect. Before I moved here, I was very worried about making mistakes. I thought people might judge me or laugh or think I'm not smart because my English isn't perfect. And when I first arrived, I was very self-conscious. I was thinking about every word. I was trying to speak correctly. I was afraid to sound wrong. But with time, I started noticing something important. People don't really judge you the way you think they do. In fact, nobody ever criticized me for making a mistake. Nobody ever told me, "Your English is bad." Nobody looked down on me for using simple words or short sentences. Most people in New Zealand are used to different accents because there are so many migrants here. They hear international English every day, so they understand that English is not everyone's first language. And I also realized something else. Most people care more about understanding you than about how correct your grammar is. If you speak slowly and clearly, people will meet you halfway. They will try to understand you. They will help you. And honestly, a big part of what stopped me from speaking freely before wasn't my English level. It was my own fear. It was my perfectionism. But after living here for a while, I understood that I didn't need perfect English to communicate. I just needed to be brave enough to speak. And that's why confidence matters more than grammar. Speaking calmly, clearly, and naturally works much better than trying to sound advanced. Discovery number two, jokes and humor take the longest time. This was one of the first things I noticed after moving to New Zealand. Making jokes in English, being spontaneous, quick, and relaxed was much harder than I expected. And honestly, at the beginning, it wasn't really possible for me. I remember lunch breaks at work very clearly. People would stand together in the kitchen, chatting and laughing. I understood what they were talking about, but when it came to jokes, I was always one step behind. I often had something funny in my head, a comment, a joke, but it was in my first language. I would start translating it in my head, trying to find the right words in English. And while I was translating, the moment was gone. Everyone had already moved on to the next topic. So I would just smile, stay quiet and listen. It was hard. Formal English felt familiar. I had studied that kind of English for years. But casual English is different. Informal English is faster, shorter, and more spontaneous. You need time for this. Time to absorb the local culture, time to understand how people joke, time to learn their common phrases, expressions, and small talk. Humor is very cultural. Even if your English is good, Jokes don't always translate, and that's completely normal. So if you're worried that you can't joke in English yet, don't worry too much about this. It doesn't mean your English is bad. It just means you haven't lived in the language long enough yet. This part comes later. It comes after listening, observing, and spending time with people. It's a natural process. And when it comes, it feels really good. Discovery number 3, understanding English is not the same as speaking English. It is completely normal to understand much more English than you can actually speak, especially if you learned English in a non-English speaking country. Most of us learn English through books, videos, movies, and listening. We spend years reading and listening in English. But we spend much less time expressing ourselves, speaking and writing. So when you move to an English-speaking country, you might understand a lot of what people say, but when it's your turn to speak, the words don't come out easily. This doesn't mean your English is bad. It just means your passive skills are stronger than your active skills. And that is very common. I remember myself at work during my first month in New Zealand. I was often quiet. I listened a lot. I absorbed how people spoke, which phrases they used, how they answered questions, how they reacted. From the outside, I probably looked shy, but inside, my brain was working all the time. I was collecting language. I noticed that before I could use a phrase naturally, I needed to hear it many times first. I needed to feel comfortable with it. Only then did I start using it myself in real conversations. This is a normal stage of language learning, and that's important to prepare for it mentally. You're not failing, you're not going backwards, you are learning. Even native speakers understand much more complex language than they actually use when they speak. So if you understand more, then you can say, don't be hard on yourself. This stage will pass. With time, practice, and exposure, speaking slowly catches up with understanding. Discovery number 4. Textbook English is very different from casual English. This discovery confused me a lot at the beginning. Before moving to New Zealand, most of the English I learned came from textbooks. Textbook English looks correct, polite, well-structured, full sentences, proper grammar. Everything makes sense on paper. So when I arrived and started listening to people in real life, I questioned the English I learned. People spoke much simpler language than I expected. Sentences were shorter, words were missing. For example, instead of saying, "Are you going to the market this Sunday?" people say, "You going to the market this Sunday?" Or instead of, "Do you want coffee?" you'd hear, "You want coffee?" Another example, "Do you know her?" Instead, you'd hear, "You know her?" At first, I remember thinking, wait, where's the grammar? In textbooks, you learn how to build a sentence correctly. You learn rules. You feel like you're making progress. And then you move to an English-speaking country and suddenly it feels like those rules disappear in everyday speech. I slowly realized that I needed to learn another type of English. Not textbook English, but spoken, casual English. Spoken English is simpler in grammar, but harder in speed and context. People drop words because everyone understands anyway. And discovery 5. Accents can be a big challenge. Another thing I didn't fully expect when I moved to New Zealand was how many different accents I would hear every day. New Zealand is a very multicultural country. People live here from all over the world. So you don't just hear one type of English, you hear many accents. Of course, you hear the Kiwi accent, but also you hear British accents, Australian accents, South African accents, and you hear many international accents like Indian, Filipino, Pacific accents, and more. So English can sound completely different depending on who is speaking. And if you struggle to understand someone, it doesn't always mean your English is bad. Sometimes it simply means you are not used to that accent yet. I remember a funny moment from when I started working in New Zealand. My boss was Kiwi, and one day he asked me to give him a pen. But with his Kiwi accent, it sounded like pain. And I was standing there thinking, pain? What pain? I didn't understand what he wanted. But of course, he meant pen. It was just the accent. And another story, this time it was my pronunciation. For a while at work, I was saying Excel sheet instead of Excel sheet. Yes, I know. My coworkers brought it to my attention. One long sound made a huge difference, and everyone laughed. Luckily, my coworkers were friendly and I laughed too. But it really showed me how powerful pronunciation is. The good news is that accents become easier with time. The more you listen, the more your ear adjusts. It's like training your brain to recognize different patterns. And honestly, people in New Zealand are usually very patient. They are used to different accents because the country is so international. So it's completely normal to ask, sorry, can you repeat that? Or, sorry, what did you say? You don't need to feel embarrassed. It's part of learning, and it's part of living in English. Discovery 6. Small talk is harder than serious talk. This one is still work in progress for me. Talking about work, tasks, or problems feels okay, but small talk? People would ask simple things like, how was your weekend? Any plans for tonight? Nice weather, huh? And in my head, I would freeze for a second. I didn't know how much to say. Do I give a short answer or do I explain everything? Do they really want to know? How personal can I get? Small talk feels simple, but it actually has a lot of hidden rules. In New Zealand, small talk is a big part of everyday communication. It's not just filler, it's how people connect and show friendliness. It's how they create a comfortable atmosphere. And the funny thing is, small talk is not about being impressive. It's not about saying something clever. It's more about being relaxed and friendly. Over time, I realized that small talk should be light, not too many personal details. Short answers are normal, and the goal is to show interest, not to be interesting. It's still something I'm working on, because you need to think fast, follow the topic, and keep it natural. And when your brain is already busy with English, it can feel like a lot. So if you feel awkward with small talk, you're not alone. It takes practice, and it improves slowly. And I think one day I'll definitely make a full video just about small talk in New Zealand, because it's such an important part of living here. Discovery 7. Native speakers use very simple English. This discovery was actually very comforting for me. Native speakers use very simple English in daily life. They use the same phrases again and again, the same patterns, the same short sentences. They don't speak like textbooks. They don't speak like formal writing. Most of the time, their English is very simple, practical, and direct. For example, when you're paying at a shop in New Zealand, the cashier will often ask you one question: cash or card? They don't say, how would you like to pay today? Because why make it longer if everyone understands anyway? Or another example, if someone asks you, going out tonight? You can answer with just one word. Yep. Or nah. Or maybe. That's it. And once I noticed this, I felt so much less pressure. I realized I didn't need perfect English to communicate. I didn't need fancy words. I didn't need advanced grammar. I just needed clear, simple English. Native speakers don't always have bigger vocabulary. They just have natural fluency and they use English in an easy way. They also don't think about grammar terms like present perfect, past participle. They don't care about phonetics. They just speak. So if you sometimes feel like your English is too simple, don't worry. Simple English is normal. Simple English is real. In fact, using simple English is one of the best ways to sound natural and confident in everyday life. Discovery 8. 2 big shifts that change everything. There is one more thing I want to share because it was a big realization for me. And I think it can give you a lot of motivation. In my English learning journey, I clearly remember 2 stages. 2 moments where everything started to feel different, like I entered a new level, a new world. The first shift happens when you reach an intermediate level. This is the moment when you can finally listen to native content, like movies, podcasts, YouTube videos, even the news, and you don't need subtitles all the time. You still don't understand every word. You still miss some phrases, but you understand the main meaning. You understand the story. You understand the context. And that feels amazing. Because at this level, you don't need to sit with a textbook for hours trying to memorize every new word. You can learn by living, by listening, watching, reading, and absorbing English naturally. I remember the first time I watched something in English and understood it without subtitles. I couldn't repeat every sentence and I didn't know all the words, but I understood. And I remember thinking, wow, I can actually do this. That's a very special moment. The second shift is when you stop translating every word in your head. You stop building sentences in your first language first. You stop thinking, how do I say this in English? And you start responding automatically. You start thinking in short English phrases. You start speaking without planning every sentence. And honestly, this is a magical feeling. Because this is the moment when English starts to feel natural, like it's part of you. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens after you practice daily, use simple English, repeat common phrases, and allow yourself to make mistakes without fear. So if you're not there yet, don't worry, it's coming. And when it happens, you will feel the difference. You will feel like you're in a new world. If you're planning to move to New Zealand, what part of English are you most nervous about? Tell me in the comments what you need help with most, and I'll create a video for you. Also, if you want practical steps to improve your speaking and start thinking in English more naturally, I have another video where I break it down step by step. I'll link it for you. Make sure to watch it next.